This week's sermon for December 21st, 2008, by Pastor Tom, entitled, Shh, Listen to God in Your Heart and See the True Beauty, is a G.L.O.V.E Ministries production. Mark 1, verses 2b and 3. Look, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, and he will prepare your way. He is a voice shouting in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord's coming. Clear the road for him. Just in case I'm being too subtle here, I want to make it plain that since this is the final week of Advent, meaning that Christmas is only 4 days away, I've decided to use a theme for this week's message. And that theme is, of course, as if you can't tell, Merry Christmas. Since it's Christmas, once again, I wanted to try and make this week's message special for you. Of course, sending you each $1 million just didn't work out this year. So instead, I thought I'd share some special thoughts that I had this last week. They really aren't new. It's just that sometimes they escape, and I need to be reminded of them. So here goes. You know, I hate to admit it, but there are a lot of things about Christmas that I just plain don't like. Yes, I see the spirit of love and giving, but I also see the spirit of greed and harassment. During Advent, we're supposed to slow down and listen for the voice of God as we await the birth of the Savior. But instead, we run around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, trying to get to the bargains before someone else beats us. We have to worry about finding the perfect gift for someone we rarely even see, when the truth is that they'll probably just exchange it anyway. We drive like something I can't even describe here, taking chances that a NASCAR driver wouldn't take, cutting people off right and left just to avoid walking an extra 20 feet from that other parking lot spot so that we can get in the store quicker. And then once we do get inside, it's no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm telling you, people are meaner and fight harder for the last iPod than a bunch of drunks in a barroom brawl. My wife works in a Christian bookstore this year where, you'd expect the clientele to be full of Christmas cheer. Instead, they almost had a physical knockdown the other day. It was over something important, though. One lady was standing patiently in line, blocking the lady behind her, who was in a hurry and didn't want to have to wait like the other people. And I'm supposed to hear God in all of that? Right. But, all of that aside, I think that what bothers me the most about this time of year is the weather. It really makes it hard to enjoy the season and draw closer to God with weather like this. I think the sun has sued the earth for divorce. And have you ever heard a nice, lively song about frolicking in the semi-dark under a cloudy sky? And how can anyone think when they're freezing to death? And I dare you to tell me how to pay attention to God while driving on ice and snow and keeping the car safe. So last night, all of the so-called holiday fun had me so relaxed that I was sitting on the edge of my bed, totally unable to sleep. I had so many things going through my head that I couldn't hear myself think, let alone hear the voice of God. I turned my head and looked out the window to confirm that it was still snowing, and grumbled to myself, when all of a sudden I saw something move. No, it must be in my imagination. Nothing could possibly be moving out in the snow in freezing weather in the middle of the night. But there it was again. I'd definitely seen it move that time. I had to look very close to see that it was in fact a rabbit. It had blended into the snow because it was, as far as I could tell, pure white. And it was just sitting there, looking around. All I could see was snow. Everywhere I looked was snow and more snow. My yard was covered with snow. The field across from me was white with snow. Even the trees and the branches were full of snow. I mean, snow was everywhere, shining in the moonlight. You know, looked at like that, it was actually quite beautiful. I sat there for what seemed like hours, watching the view, until something else caught my attention. What was I hearing? It seemed familiar, and yet, wait a minute. Now I recognize it. Wow. It's been so long since I've heard total silence, I had almost forgotten what it sounds like. And so I just sat there, listening, as I gazed out over the wonderful scenery. And as I sat there entranced, I began to think of an old Christmas carol I've always loved. In my head I could hear it clearly. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. I began to wonder if this was how it was on the night our Savior entered the world. And if it was, then how could it have happened? I mean, first of all, how could there have been this beautiful snow? We all know that December 25th is just a day picked by men to celebrate the birth of Christ. So we don't really know when he was born, but we do know that it was in the springtime, not the winter. Yes, I know what they teach in Sunday school, but the truth is that the Bible itself tells us that Jesus was born in the spring. Luke 2:8 says, "That night there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flocks of sheep." Now, at that time and place, the shepherds always brought their sheep home and locked them in the folds or pens at night. And the exception came only once a year, because it was time for the lambing, or when the sheep gave birth to baby lambs. So, since we know that sheep give birth in the spring, we know what season it was, which tells us that there most likely wasn't any snow. But you can still have a silent night without snow, can't you? I'd certainly say so. But then again, well, we did say it was lambing time. Now, if you've ever lived on a farm that raised animals, you know that when one is born, it's anything but silent. Now add to this the fact that most shepherds had many sheep in their flock, and a good part of them were female. And on top of that, most of the shepherds tended to congregate in the same area to help each other out, which all adds up to many sheep giving birth to a whole lot of noise. So we discover that the song had it all wrong. Or did it? So if there was so much noise and the shepherds were supposed to be tending the flocks, then how is it they were sleeping? Had all the lambs been born already? Then why were none of the little ones crying out, as newborn lambs do? Had the shepherds maybe had enough and drugged them all so that they could rest? Then why were they all asleep when at least some of them should have been up watching for predators? I guess maybe we'll never know the real reason, but here's the one that works for me. It was a silent night because it was a holy night it was a true miracle because God wanted them to be able to listen and see the glory he was offering. Now, if that doesn't explain it, just spend time listening to a snowfall in the moonlight, or the leaves turning color, or a newborn baby. If none of these work, try the place God talks to you the loudest. Just look inside your own heart. Merry Silent Christmas.